Welcome, everybody, to Mentor Time. Nice to be back again after a few weeks of an irregular schedule during what's in the summer in the United States. As always, if you don't want to be on video, go ahead and put yourself in the video only mode. Today, we're going to talk about checking your professional development habits. And I like to do this to remind everybody, including me, that we need to do more than update our resume or think about our accomplishments either every year when we have a performance review, when we're looking for a job, or maybe if we suddenly get a burst of energy and think, oh yeah, Sue told me I should do this someday. I want to talk today about what professional development is not, and then what it is. I'm going to start with the isn't first. Then we're going to go on to what I call a broader view of professional development. I want to put a definition out there that I think matches much more of what we should be thinking of nowadays. And finally, as always, I leave you with what should you do? So as we start with, first of all, what is not professional development? This isn't exactly what professional development is not, but it is a list of the things that traditional professional development gets wrong, I think is how they talked about it in the article. And this is probably familiar to many of you in the US, where you may have had professional development funding and they bring in someone to train you on requirements such as equal opportunity or harassment. But also you may be going to training where you sign up to use professional development funds to get more skills. And it's dumping a whole lot of PowerPoint slides on you. If you go to Excel training, open your spreadsheet and do this with no one helping you or showing you. No ongoing support. And in many ways, the important thing is there's often not a link between professional development that a company arranges or that you use their funding for within their parameters, and what and how you're going to then practice and add it to your experience as you gain those skills and then need to put them into place. So it's really difficult, especially the last one, which I really value, is we never have a way to measure the student learning, because the student learning or the learner isn't connected to the professional development, may or may not be connected to what we're supposed to be doing on the job. So this is what it is not, just to remind us all of how it used to be if you haven't been in a company for a while. I found a few definitions, and I brought this one forward because this is the more traditional one. Learning and training to advance your career. Companies offer these things. There's a very, for me, this is a very old-fashioned way to think about it. I found for teachers an article on 5 phases of PD, and these are not surprising. But again, the things we're supposed to do and whether the training encompasses building the knowledge, observing models, reflecting on your practice, changing your practice, gaining experience, those are the things that should be linked to the job if you're an employee setting, or a job if you're running your own business. I was pleased to find a recent article from betterup.com where this is much more in line of what I was thinking about when I proposed this topic for today. And that is anything that you do to get better at your job. And I think even farther than that, and those like Peter and Stephanie who've worked with me for many years know that I tell them, and I tell all of you, you are in control of your professional development. I can help you, give you guidance. You don't always have to take it. Sometimes it doesn't work for you. But when you control it, then it is you view everything through the lens of how and in what way am I making a more complete self to present for my next career step, my promotion, things like that. Because then as it went down farther, they fall back on more traditional activities. So I'm going towards the very broad definition of what you do and how you orchestrate activities, including networking you do at a briefing meeting before and after when you are briefing a minister. Maybe you talk to the permanent secretary, or maybe you talk to technical colleagues. All of those things are in one way or another your professional development. So this broader view of professional development, I thought the best way to show it to you is to show you topics that we have covered in MentorTime in the last 2 years, 2.5 now almost. And then what I've done is I've put them there in order of how they came up in my list. And then I've categorized them, which I hope will give you a more thought about the various ways that you are learning and growing every time you do something. One of the first things we talked about after the first introduction of MentorTime is how do you leave anything gracefully? I know it sounds like a funny topic, but it was an interesting topic about people who don't know what to say when someone's leaving or you're leaving. Then we went on to a topic that I've covered again, and that is please share what you're doing, because it isn't bragging, it's not self-promotion, and still people are not super comfortable, but we're getting there. How to say no without saying a big no, and that's similar to the first one in terms of giving you sample scripts. We went on to making sure people were tracking their intellectual property, the products that demonstrate you as knowledge workers, the way in which you write things, convey things to different audiences, speak both professionally at conferences as well as working with, for example, multi-sectoral groups if you're trying to do a citywide intervention. We covered again clarifying branding and visibility so that you, with the emphasis the last 2 years more and more with the way in which an ATS like resume needs to be parsed by a machine and by a human. It gave you some opportunities, but there are other things you need to be able to take advantage of. Showing and using transferable skills, again, the experience of what you've got. Active and intentional networking, we've talked about this a few times, even recently, about reviewing networking much more as engagement. Assessing and displaying yourself. This is my particular interest, is helping you understand that your CV and resume, your LinkedIn profile are not just words, the content, it also is how you format it. How do you get people to read? The goal is the scroll in your resume, in your CV, in your LinkedIn profile. We want people to scroll. We don't want to stop the scroll. And acknowledging when to say thank you and everything else. Again, this comes more with networking. What can you do to continue to expand how you interact with people, which gives you skills of being able to communicate. And what we've learned in COVID is the virtual ways that we can maintain this. And finally, showing your experience and also showing your skills at the same time. And I've talked a lot about the fact that skills are not the same as experience, so we need to be aware of how we show what we've done. So here's how I categorized it, and I tried to put an icon that might make sense in terms of the things that really get you to your professional development habits. First one, share what you're doing. It's not self-promotion. I actually did a short MentorTime in one of the first sessions on it's okay to tell people you're not bragging or something like that. The next two are about leaving, basically about separating yourself from an activity or people, whether it's you leaving or a person leaving or someone asking you to take on work. And I had to learn how to say no to my boss by going to him and saying, I have 5 projects here. Tell me which one to give up if you want me to lead this proposal. And that was a way I had to say no to him without saying, I can't do this. Not surprisingly, the next two are all about branding and visibility, increasing your visibility through increasing how much and how you can share things. The 3 bullets towards the just underneath the middle of the divided page are on all the aspects that are your digital assets, your professional assets that show the work you've been able to do. And then the bottom 2 are networking, different ways that you can engage and network to expand what you're doing, which again is engaging. So what should you do? The whole focus of this section is you, as I've always said, you need to continually advocate for yourself. You're in control here. How and in what way are you going to make sure that your side of the conversation has the data, the examples, the information you need so that you can engage the other side of the conversation? So I've got 3 steps I want you to think about. The first is you should be continually collecting results and seminal activities. But Sue, I keep my long CV up to date once a year. Yes, I know, but I know that many people I've been working with the last few years are writing more and more, developing training, developing articles. So maybe your CV has your articles and your reports, but someone who wrote a weekly newsletter for 2 years on health law told me, I don't want to put all this on my CV. And so we came up with a Google Sheet, which this is a sample of a portfolio I've done for myself. But as you all are also doing different kinds of things, you're not just doing briefing meetings with community stakeholders, presentations at professional conferences. I found I needed to be able to connect more of my posts, and I circled here, Peter had actually posted about something that we talked about a few weeks ago in MentorTime and tagged me in it. So I have been trying to figure out how to capture this kind of information. Recently, because of the course launch and because of work I'm doing with PH Spot, a public health career club, I've been doing more posts on, join my course, or I'm going to be presenting at that. So I wanted to figure out how those things, what kind of visibility cues we can get from those. So I'm giving you a sample. If anybody wants the Google Sheet model for this, it's not a big deal. It does have a drop-down list. If you know how to use those, it's easy to modify mine. Just let me know by email. If you're watching in the replay, same thing, and I'll send you a link to it. I'll share it for you. So figure out what you want to collect that may not be just documentation, times you present at a conference, training that you conducted, or strategies you've designed. They can all go on your CV. You could make a 30-page CV. That's fine too. But I'm just saying there's ways that you can categorize data, such as in a spreadsheet, that might be helpful. So the second step, no surprise, Sue's a data person, aggregate your data. So you take the presentations, the stuff you write, the stuff people have said about you, stuff you've done virtually, stuff you've done in person. And it comes out of this funnel as you. Maybe the first way it comes out in what you've categorized as you've aggregated, and we've all done this in graduate school, you are a health systems expert. Maybe you do it again, or there's another piece of you that has a systems planner aspect that you want to talk about. It might be that you end up saying, oh, I look more like a health policy writer, but I don't want to be doing that. So what does that mean I need to do about what I have for the way I'm talking about myself? And finally, maybe you've decided you want to do much more advocacy on the regional level across a region of the US, for example, to talk about systems work and interchanging with colleagues that do that. And then the third step is using your data. And this is why you're aggregating it. You target your data. You take this aggregated data to tell a specific story that you're aiming at. The other part, though, of using your data is to make sure that it's a habit so you don't fall behind and you're not my friend who 4 years ago said to me, Sue, I need a new job. I've been at the same job 12 years and I have never updated my resume since then. Or in her long CV, she was in academics then. So make it a habit. And in fact, here's the bonus that I can offer you. Tomorrow morning, I have a 2-hour co-working session. That means I'm going to start a Zoom meeting. You can attend. There's not going to be a lot of talking unless someone has a question. This is not office hours. Help me, Sue. This is for us to update our CV, resume, LinkedIn profile, whatever you want to update. So I wanted to give you a way to think about professional development and remind you in those categories I showed you, it's not just one blob of this is my professional development or this is the training I went to, my company sent me to, but aspects of what you do that is both your professional branding, also you're engaging in networking, the way in which you can show the effectiveness of what you do, your results and achievements, And the way in which you learn how to use the first two things that I put up were how to say no and how to leave things gracefully, difficult situations, which are communication and what people like to call soft skills. I'm going to show you that I only have a couple references. And then, Ron, if you have comments, I'd love to hear what you think about this broader view of professional development.
Yeah, Sue, I think this is brilliant what you've done. Thank you very much. I think on behalf of everyone, it's been very good. And it's interesting because I've explained, or we've talked about the fact that I came through a military career and I learned how to manage my own career by accident or through osmosis or something, because I was able to be really lazy because the military wanted to manage my career. And so they did all the things that you're talking about for me or to me. And so I acquired that thing. And so some notes that I jotted down that might be useful: job experience as development. And so in the military, they move people around for not just because they need the job filled, but they move them so that somebody will get experienced. Folks who are not in that environment need to mimic that. In other words, get jobs that are going to provide experience, get experience opportunities, and do that to give you that wealth of experience so your career can advance. The military is very selfish. And so they are interested in their people, but they're more interested in getting the job done, advancement, and so on. It's all about getting the right person in the right place and helping them develop so that the military can do its job better. So we, on the civilian side, because there's nobody out there looking out for you, you got to do it for yourself. And so the other thing is training. Yeah, you take training opportunities that are going to help. And then something that is often not thought of is your performance review. The performance review itself is in fact a way of adjusting, understanding, and so on. And you've talked about it. So what do you bring up to your boss? What do you do? It's a two-way conversation. In the military, it's often one way. In other words, this is what we noticed. So what are you going to do about it? And so I think civilian world is better at doing that. And so when you have that kind of conversation, it's good for guiding you and taking hints from whatever your boss has to say during that. And then this whole idea of guidance, in other words, mentoring, guidance, and so on, is about professional development and seeking out people who can help you manage your career and push yourself forward. Promote yourself nicely. And you said that because I have witnessed people who are terrible at self-promotion because they're so obvious. This guy, and people will point and they'll say, look at that person's, they're sucking up to the boss. It's just so obvious. So the challenge is to do that well and to do it along the line Sue is saying, is that there is a way of doing it so that you do promote yourself without looking like a jerk, if I could say it that way. And the other thing is about saying yes and saying no. I really like that, because saying no to a project that you can't properly accomplish is brilliant. Where we want to please, we want to do stuff, we want the experience, we want to show that we're willing to work. And yet they put you on a project that you can't possibly complete properly. Say no. The Navy is terrible at this. The Navy refuses to say no. And I've seen so many instances of people, I come from the Navy, so I'm speaking from experience, they just say yes to everything. And that can really kill a career. This idea of taking on a job that you're not quite ready for or whatever. So anyway, I just loved what you had to say, Sue. And it just brought back so many memories that I wish that somebody had taught me this way back when. I had to learn it the hard way through the School of Hard Knocks. And I've had to help people manage their careers in the military. And the stuff you're talking about is just so wonderful. So thanks very much, Sue. Hopefully I didn't go on too long, but maybe that was useful too.
It's really helpful, Ron. For me, as I said, I have been thinking about this topic, and then I thought, wait a minute, it should be reflected in all the things we talk about in our bite-sized chunks every time we have mentor time. And as I started to think about, I've always thought that it's broader because for a decade of my living overseas, I did manage my consulting and my schoolwork and everything else. I've had, like many entrepreneurs and solopreneurs are doing, what I see among all the people who are on our call today, I know each of you, and I know you're also doing this. And I just want to encourage you to regularize it if you can. Ron and I have talked about the way in which we can offer you things that support you. That's why I decided to try out the co-working session in hopes that it would get us at least twice a year. We'll do it this time tomorrow, and then probably early December, so you're ready for the new year. But I find, as someone who contacted me the other day, and I worked with her a year and a half ago, she sent me her resume and she said, I'm bored with my job. It's really great, but there's no challenges. And I said, you sent me a resume that has all my track changes comments in it from a year and a half ago. She said, yeah, I didn't take the time to update it because I got a job. And that's the problem, I know. So Ron and I have talked about and have a variety of other things we're talking about. Maybe we can help you with as well. But right now we have office hours, mentor time, and then co-working, so that hopefully you all can be enabled to get those habits done. And I appreciate the people that come here, like many of you that are on right now that regularly come, people that come to office hours regularly, and those who drop in when they can. And we love having you too. So that's great. I'm going to open up the floor. Stephanie, Sheila, Kim, Peter, anybody have anything they want to add to that?
No, I just want to say thank you for your July session. I unfortunately was not able to attend, but you had so much information in there. I listened to it twice and it was just really outstanding. And I appreciate all the information you put into it.
Can you remind me what the topic was? I'm blanking on what I even, it was at the, oh, that was the update on quarterly update on working. Didn't I do that in
Yes.
early July? Yeah. Yeah.
And I printed off all the references too, and they were very informational, partly because it was great to see what other parts of the world are doing and how they're returning to work.
And we're finally getting more information from that in that whole sense. I was just listening to an Australian woman talking about something totally different about the internet, but talking about the disruption of work and what that's meaning for whatever. Any other comments? Thanks, Stephanie, for acknowledging that, because I enjoy putting that together, and I've already started plunking things in a PowerPoint. Peter, hands up. Thank you.
Yeah, Sue, I was thinking as you were talking and also as Ron was talking as well, that I don't think that either of my degree programs really did a very good job of thinking about professional development and talking about how it's important for you. And in a similar way to Ron, it wasn't something that I even really thought about until recently. Unfortunately, I didn't have the building that up in me until really I started working more consistently with you in the last few years. So I think it's great that I've finally gotten on board just 20 years into my career here. But I also appreciate it because as I'm stepping into a directorship role in the coming months, that's something that I really want to be thinking about and really encouraging people to think about and how they can do that career development and that kind of thing as well. Hopefully I'll be able to take some of these and use them in what I'm doing next as well to help people.
Good. And you can put me on your list for guest speakers. I'll do a virtual one if I can travel even better, but definitely virtual. Yeah, I wrote that down because I often say these are things we're never taught in school. And I think it's true. Career services has enough to do to get people out the door with passing grades. And they do a lot, and they do a lot more now. They have all sorts of sessions and guest speakers and they even get LinkedIn at Tulane. They get LinkedIn to come in and do LinkedIn sessions plus headshots. But that's the surface visibility, kind of like the initial dating profile. You got to look good in that, and you got to have the right headline and stuff. But it's the charisma and chemistry of whatever that you have to put forward in your job searching.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Sorry. Go ahead, Peter.
Even things like, oh, they tell you, I remember when I first graduated my undergrad, they said, oh, it's great if your job will send you to a conference or whatever. And other than getting to go to a new city, I had no idea even why that was good. But okay, it's good that you could be learning something, you're networking with people, it's so much more that all these little things that I didn't know that were part of it. So it's really good.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Kim, I'm happy to hear from you.
This is a bit new to me because I have I'm I haven't updated my resume because I don't know what I can update other than I had a very impressive resume, but I haven't worked in the public health field since probably 2002. And so I'm re-entering the job market at going on 59 next month and about to go through a divorce. And so I'm forced to go back to find a job, like a stable job, as opposed to being an entrepreneur. And I applied for a lot of jobs at NIH, WHO. I applied for a job at the Hilton, non-academic, but a global wellness director. And I've received a couple of rejections, and I've received many, like nothing, crickets. I applied months ago.
Yeah.
And NIH, I applied, it was by referral only, and within a day of receiving, and it's like the job was written for me. And within a day of receiving my application, I was asked, how did you find out about it? So I mentioned an impressive person, and it's been cricket. And the other thing is that I don't know what kind of letters of reference references I'm going to get. I haven't been in the field for 20 years. So it's harder as an older person, and I'm not a person of color. I'm feeling a little bit discouraged.
First, let me say, I understand completely. And if it helps you to know this, most of the time when I tell people I talk to individually, you are not the only one, number one. You are not the only one with a big gap in a technical area you want to go back to. And again, I'm telling you this because it feels like you're alone. And one thing I hear over and over again is, it's so good, Sue, that you tell me I'm not the only one who did X or Y. So you're not alone. And you're also at a time where I feel employers want guarantees for every single thing they do. And they want you to sit around and wait for them. So you are in a difficult position of having the gap, which is not insurmountable, but also in terms of them being more cautious. Peter can tell you he went through job search for the last several years, and he was asked to do 2-hour time test twice, like on a Friday afternoon. They're like, start at this time. And I think, Peter, you had 7 documents to review, and then you had to do a PowerPoint presentation and write a policy brief about what the plan for the next year would be based on these 7 and 6.
I don't know if I can do that.
Well, but this is the insane amount of work everybody's being asked to do, like a PowerPoints for this and briefing papers for that. So don't get scared off. I'm just saying everybody's facing it, and no one can figure out, like the employers sitting on all this real estate, so they're insisting you come to the office. Same thing with hiring. The HR people are trying to move as fast as they can. They're trying to use the ATSs to make their life easier. And now ChatGPT, the large language models, I follow some technical recruiters for that. It's very hard. What you need to do, though, is think about the things I just talked about. The way in which you can tell a cohesive story, because you and I had a chat, and I know that you are not sitting on the couch eating candy for the last 20 years. So you figure out how to weave your story about what you've done and what you've brought forward, because I'm sure that if I thought about it more and pulled out the resume you shared with me, and knowing what I saw on your LinkedIn profile when we first connected, that you have examples of the way in which you've put public health into action. And this doesn't have to be officially, formally paid. We all finally understand that volunteer work generally is real work, unless you just do one afternoon of sorting at a food pantry. Nothing wrong with that, but that's not showing work characteristics and practices where you can talk about it.
Yeah.
Same thing that then can link with, let me just finish one more thing for you. References, this comes up a lot for me with solopreneurs who want to get back to a job. Think about the way in which you've worked with people where you can use those. I've occasionally served for people that I work with long-term in mentoring, served as a reference for them. So there are solutions to a lot of what you brought up. I can't help you. We can't help you in everything. But let me stop there. Does that help you think through Right now, you've got this big ball. Oh, all these things are the problem. And I'm trying to help you pull it apart and say, okay, there's a solution for this. There's a solution for this. I'm going to stop talking and let Kim talk and then Ron talk, because I
Yeah,
know
I mean,
Ron has
For
ideas.
the NCI one, I wrote I thought, relative to the WHO's, and I've since really restructured my resume, but I thought my NCI the letter of intent was really creative. I told the story and I made it personal, and I didn't talk about the gap. I talked about how innovative my work was, that I don't even think the field has changed in tobacco control. I was at the cutting edge of a lot of work, and I worked with top people, and I was a postdoc with the Canadian version of NCI. It was NCIC.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then all the WHOs, sometimes I think they're probably hiring from within. I don't know. I haven't come across any other jobs that interest me lately, but then there's other jobs. Like now I just found something with JCADA, it's the Jewish Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And it's an area that I have unfortunately, a lot of personal experience in, which is why I'm leaving. My marriage is over. But I thought I'd like to do something a little bit different. I would consider this, but then they're looking at people with a bachelor's degree. I'm totally overeducated.
Yeah.
I'm overqualified. It's probably a $45,000 a year job.
Yeah.
The other ones I was applying for were between 85 and 150,000, and the WHO is like net because UN pays the taxes.
Yeah.
So, okay, do I think of it like 50,000? My daughter, who just finished university, is making more than that.
Yeah. I know.
It's demoralizing.
Yeah. There's a lot of factors at work that have changed in work in the last couple of years. One thing that's not changed is I haven't worked with NIH lately, but the company I retired from had a lot of NIH workers. There's still a style of writing where they're looking for innovation, but they want the professional level research. And I'm sure you wrote like that, but it may not be what they're expecting. WHO, it's very hard for an American to get into WHO. Very hard.
I'm a dual citizen. I'm Canadian. I just became an American citizen. So
good. I don't even know what the numbers are for Canadians, but you know that I'm just saying you've got a lot of these hidden biases that work against you.
Yeah, but I do live in the Washington, D.C. area. So
Right.
like 10 minutes away. And
it'd be convenient.
But it's been crickets.
And that's what, there was a post yesterday someone did who saw on TikTok this candidate who was railing up about having gone through a long interview process and then told that he wasn't their candidate after, I don't know, weeks. But apparently then the person was interviewed the hiring manager who said he told us we treated him badly and didn't do this and that. And it's one of these people that got so frustrated they couldn't keep their mouth shut. We all know we can't burn bridges. We can't figure out. There are generally not lazy people doing most of the jobs that most of us have to have an interface with. So hiring managers are overworked. HR folks are overworked. Do more with less. Hire. Our benchmark was hire in 42 days. We never met that. Even people that said, I have the perfect candidate, the person couldn't come or they dropped out or whatever. Ron, do you have some wisdom you can add, please?
I think you've covered most of what I would say. This idea of being discouraged, it sounds familiar, and it's hard to break this business of breaking in. It's almost like you're starting new. And I think in some ways you are, but you're not, because you're breaking in with that world of experience. And so I guess one of the things that you might find yourself having to consider is a job that isn't going to be ideal, but it gets you in the door somewhere, especially if there's a place that has career advancement opportunities within that organization. And because sometimes you can't get hired unless you're already hired. Sometimes you can't get hired in an organization unless you're part of it. Or they'll give preference to individuals in the organization. Right. That's just the biases that work up there. So just some thoughts. And we do have a course that deals with some of the issues that you're talking about. And I'm not meaning to be self-promoting, but there is a course that we're running which talks about some of those issues. And it's actually going to be starting almost immediately.
Yeah, you have to register by tonight.
Yeah, you can pop me the link. And at the same time, I'm just focusing on advancing my own business because I have potential to make more money, but looking for a work is a full-time job, and I have this business and I'm all over the place. So I'm just feeling a little bit discouraged.
So-
Yeah.
so as I
Let me
understand,
give you pom-poms for showing up here and finding some support. Seriously, Ron and I value the people's ability to show up here means you've got some interest in how you're going forward.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if
thanks,
could I
Peter,
just ask
for
you
all-
one question? Could I just ask you one question, Kim? Are you looking to basically build your business, or are you looking to be an employee? And that those are very different ways of looking at the future. And perhaps today you're saying, I'm trying to do both. So I guess there is a question. Building your business has its own challenges, and especially in your area of expertise and so on and so forth. So I guess that's a question to ask. So are you going to be a contractor who does contract work, or are you going to be an individual who becomes an employee? And that's perhaps the strategy is a little different.
Yeah, my preference was always to build my business, but the reality is, given my divorce and upcoming divorce, and I have no retirement, I have no pension, I have nothing saved, and I moved from Canada, I see her from Canada to here. I have to look for work, and it's the reality. Maybe I can do both, and I'm trying to do both, and do I want to go back to research from all these years ago? No, I really don't. Like, my heart isn't there. My skills are there. It's like 20-year gap. And I worked with very top people at the University of Toronto and NCSC, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
All right, I'm going to have to cut
Yeah,
off.
thank you very much.
Stephanie, I know you had your hand raised. Did you have a comment or a question?
Yes, I just thought it might be helpful to Kim, because Kim, I'm at CDC. I would encourage you to look beyond the agencies you just listed, because we have people that are leaving CDC to go to other places like SAMHSA, that there is a public health component. It may not be readily visible until you start looking, but we are having people go to some of the other agencies. Health and Human Services, SAMHSA, et cetera. So I just encourage you to, yes, thank you. HRSA, I'd forgotten about HRSA, is a good one as well. Over.
Okay.
Thanks, Stephanie. Those are great agencies. And PCORI is a NIH funded effort for patient care and quality. I can't remember exactly. I believe it's run out of like maybe HRQ.
Okay.
But what I want to leave everybody with the idea of is, and some of you on this call have worked with me over and over again, and you are in the habit, and thanks, Peter, for validating that it's made a habit for you. I know it does, because you reach out to me. You don't wait. You're not waiting for me to follow up, because I don't keep track of people that closely. But remember, you are in control of this. Stephanie, you came to me years ago on the visibility issue, and you've learned how to use that. You've done a great job, and even more at CDC and in what your career has brought forward. Peter, same thing. What today was meant to be is to remind you that it's time to update. Take some time. Maybe there's one more week of summer if things aren't quite ramped up yet for the office, although I know we're getting towards the end of the US government fiscal year. But also, for those of you watching who are in global environments, think about what will work for you. Maybe tomorrow having a co-working session from noon to 2 p.m. doesn't work, because in India it's very late. I'm willing to get up early. I'm up early often anyway to do an early session. But the idea is not Sue has to do it. It's how can I help you make these habits? Some of you have made these habits for office hours and mentor time at 2 different times each month. I want to stop there. Next week, we're going to be talking about, is AI coming for your job, basically? And it's been amazing, because in the last month, almost every other day, I open up the PowerPoint and put in another article that someone's written or something I've heard on the internet. Very interesting information. Statistics are beginning to come out about what % of jobs, et cetera. And then I'm thinking that we'll have 2 sessions in September, and I should have an email out on that next week. One of those sessions, the later one in September, will be the quarterly update on the world of work and what we see. I'm going to ask Ron if you'll close the meeting. I'd appreciate it.
Thanks very much, everyone, for your contributions today. Very interesting stuff, and some of the challenges that are out there. So thank you for sharing with us. And one thing we keep finding is that when you share your concerns and the conversation happens around those, others benefit. And I appreciate that you permit others to experience this particular talk as well, because others will sign in and they'll hear our conversation and it will benefit them as well. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.